together. This is an incredible journey we all need to make together. I've had the wonderful privilege to hear some of the speakers here, and I've learned an awful lot about a lot of things. We have to continue to do this. There are people out there that really want it to stop. And their way of doing it isn't necessarily to kill you, it's to torture you and crush you, because if they kill you, they make you a martyr. They'd rather see you destroyed.
I have tried to live my life as an American. Now, I believed in America. You know, I thought we had some rights, but I've seen them taken away. You know, I was happy just to do my job and drive my car and chase women. And little by little, that's all gone. Somebody said, what did you do? I worked with kids. Developmental psychology, child development. I wasn't the best student there ever was, but I worked hard. I liked what I did. Had a good job. You know, kind of the American dream. And for what? Because I wanted to get some help, because I didn't know what to do. This shouldn't happen. People know that this is going on. I've had thousands of emails since we went on the radio. People who have never seen these pictures that you have seen, that have also experienced things like this firsthand, who know this is happening, who are deathly afraid to say anything, who have been threatened and beat up, and worse. This is not the first time this has happened. This isn't about me. I'm not important. What's important is this stuff has to come out. We need to quit listening to those who say nothing is going on. We need to wake up and look with different eyes and learn that there's things that do go bump in the night that we can't explain.
I'd like to take this opportunity to read to you something, Jonathan, we could call it a dream. I think it was much more powerful than that. This was shortly after his stint in the woods. This was during the 9-day ordeal. I fell into a deep sleep. In my dream, I was drifting through a tunnel of light and pulsing energy. I could see the universe dotted with bright stars at the end of the tunnel. I began to move faster. The light and energy surrounding me blurred into indefinable colors. Sound became visible. My speed continued to accelerate. I felt myself stretch into what felt like pure energy. And before I realized it, I was out of the tunnel and somewhere else in space. I passed through gaseous clouds and protomatter. My forward motion began to slow, and the stars went from stretched bolts of light to masses of glowing energy. Soon I found myself flying over a large ball of fire. Its intensity should have blinded me. Somehow I was protected. Everything seemed so real that I never questioned my place there. I simply belonged. It was if I made this voyage every night. I passed what had to be the sun of a solar system. That's when I saw it, a planet not unlike our own, but smaller in size. How I knew this, I couldn't say. But here, information seemed to be a part of the strange journey. They were facts I had no way of knowing, data that had not been obtained through the process of learning, but somehow were bestowed upon me by means as mysterious to me as the origin of the universe. I was floating above some sort of city. Its awesome beauty was beyond anything I had ever seen. Mountains covered in purple and green, surrounded by cyclopean towers and large glass spires. Floating crystal tubes filled the azure sky. I could see clearly within them. What I saw were people who appeared to be considerably taller than ourselves. The color of their skin was bluish gray in hue, and they all had staffs of green fire. I'll explain why this is so hard. Which seemed somehow not to burn them. I started to move towards one of the tubes in particular. I was accelerating, but not as quickly as before. I could do nothing to change my direction, and was in fear that I would collide with the thing. Ahead and past the tube were pyramid-shaped buildings that seemed to collapse in on themselves, only to be whole again. Were they actually moving, or was this a trick of design? For some unknown reason, I began to feel nervous. I did not want to see what was in the tube that I was quickly approaching. The windows as I came closer were dark and tinted, but there were shadows inside, silhouettes I could not make out. Something caught my attention to the right of me. I looked and saw more of the folding pyramids, but there was something else, a large black shape, slowly moving in my direction. Or was it moving at all? Could it be that it was undulating like some living thing? The size was staggering. It was a great triangle-shaped form hovering miles above the planet. Once again I was looking straight ahead of me. Then suddenly I was thrust into the tube. I moved through the dark crystal like a dolphin through water. It felt as though there was no resistance. Inside the tube was much larger, seemed much larger than it did on the outside. Inside it was about the size of a large passenger plane. Outside it had appeared the size of a small bus. I could see two people at the far end of the tube, sitting on the cushions of energy. Moving towards them, I realized that I recognized them. It was Gary and another friend of mine, Dolly. Gary was wearing a tailored suit, Dolly blue jeans, and a sweater. Gary walked up to me and asked, "How do you like my new designs?" Then he shook my hand and said goodbye. Dolly smiled and I woke up. I saw Gary. I saw what these bastards did to him. I don't know what these corruptible fiends are thinking. As hard as this is, I'm not going to stop. I'm right alongside Jonathan. I'm not going to give up. We have to get this information out, whatever the cost. Or we're all going to live our blind little lives alone. And that's not going to happen to me.
Somebody asked what happened to Dolly. Dolly's dead. About a few months after I left town, I went underground. I decided that if no one was going to help me, and everywhere I went, doors were being closed, then I had to get out of town. And I went back a few months later, called Dolly, and asked her if I could come over and pick up the package that I had left with her. 3 hours went by. I went and knocked on her door, and I found her dead in her kitchen on the floor. It was later determined that she had died of natural causes. The package was gone. There was no sign of it.
Whitley Strieber once told me when I called him, and he said, in a caring fashion, maybe you should just bury this. After hearing Jonathan and knowing But then he said, I'm not saying to do this.